One of the most common practices you'll see in an Agile team is the daily stand-up meeting. Typically, this is a 15-minute meeting where everyone gets together to make sure everyone knows what has been done since the last meeting and what everyone plans to do before the next meeting. To keep the meetings short and focused, most teams conduct them standing up. There are a lot of teams who have what they call a daily stand-up that don't get much value out of the meetings. If your team is doing a daily stand-up because you've heard it's the way to be agile, you probably need to spend some time discussing why you're actually doing those meetings. Agile doesn't say anything about having a daily stand-up meeting. Teams that don't know what Agile values and principles are behind a particular practice are unlikely to really get the full benefit out of those practices. So why do teams do these daily meetings? What is the principle behind the practice? Consider this Agile principle. The most effective and efficient method of conveying information to and within a development team is face-to-face conversation. A short daily in-person meeting is a very effective way of making sure that the entire team has at least one opportunity each day to talk face-to-face. I like to see teams call these meetings the daily face-to-face meeting because it keeps people focused on the principle behind the meeting rather than the physical position of the attendees. When teams don't realize that they are trying to follow the principle of face-to-face communication, they end up doing all kinds of weird things that often defeat the purpose of the meetings. For example, I worked with one team where people would call into a conference line for the daily stand-up meeting every day and then walk into the team room 2 minutes after the meeting completed, put on their headphones so no one could talk to them, and start on writing code. They were so focused on the practice of having a 15-minute meeting that they entirely missed the principle behind the practice. As a result, they removed the very thing that Agile said was valuable, face-to-face communication. Needless to say, this team was doing a lot of other stuff that sounded like a highly functional Agile team. On the surface, they had a lot of practices you'd find in an Agile team, but once you started digging into things, it was apparent that much of what was being done ran contrary to the Agile principles and values. They weren't reaching anywhere near their full potential because there was no foundation beneath their practices. Now, the reality is that many teams are distributed. Some people may not be able to fly across the world every day for a 15-minute face-to-face meeting. Teams that are trying to follow the principle of face-to-face communication will tend toward using video conferencing for their daily meetings because it's the next best way to communicate. When you're driven by Agile principles, you can easily evolve your practices to deal with new conditions and changes. If you want to really develop software efficiently using Agile, you have to make sure that everyone knows the principles behind each practice, and nowhere is this more true than your daily face-to-face meetings. Do you have an interesting story about a daily stand-up meeting? If so, please leave it in the comments. And if you found this video helpful, please take a moment to like it, subscribe, and share it with people on your team.